All right, so to finish out our unit on the law, both criminal and civil, we're going to talk about juvenile law because it applies to most of you sitting in this room as you are a student and are considered to be a juvenile by the state of North Carolina. All right, so who is defined, first of all, what is juvenile law? It's made to protect juveniles. The purpose of the law is to protect people rather than to control them or restrain them. It's to protect everyone from each other and from themselves sometimes. All right, the punishments that are attached to juvenile law are not meant to hurt people, and they're meant to rehabilitate or correct your behavior. So if you go to rehab, like let's say you have knee surgery or you tear your ACL and you have to go to physical therapy and rehab your knee, you have to learn how to use that muscle again after the trauma that has been put onto it by an injury as well as a surgery. So if you break any kind of law as a juvenile, the consequences that you receive are meant to correct your behavior so you can prevent it in the future and you don't become a career criminal, all right? Because if you don't cut off the behavior early, typically people who have juvenile records, they are anywhere from 60 to 80% more likely to have a criminal record as an adult. So we want to prevent that that prison pipeline from getting full with juveniles. So what's considered to be a juvenile in North Carolina is someone who is under the age of 16. All right, so if you are 15 years old, 11 months, and 29 days, you are still considered to be a juvenile. All right, so if your birthday is November the 1st and you're 15 and you're almost 16, if you commit a crime on October the 31st, on Halloween, and your birthday is the next day, you will still be considered a juvenile because you were a juvenile at the time that the crime was committed. All right, this is going to change in 2019. All right, so not this year, but next year, starting on January 1, if you commit a crime, you will be considered a juvenile under the age of 18. All right, because you were considered to be a legal adult in the United States at the age of 18. You can vote at 18 based on which amendment. I hope you know, because there's a question coming up. All right. Once you turn 18, you are allowed to vote. You can legally emancipate yourself from your parents. You can drive without having to have parent permission once you turn 18 in North Carolina. So where the General Assembly, the state legislature in North Carolina, has decided to bump up the age of a juvenile to 17, 11 months, and 29 days. All right, because usually months are 30 days. All right. Now, if you commit a crime and you are a juvenile, aka under the age of 16 until next year, you're known as what's called a juvenile delinquent. All right. Delinquent just means someone who has not adhered to a law or abided by a law. You haven't done what you were supposed to do. All right. If you don't pay your school fees every year, you are put on a list called the delinquent fee list. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you haven't fulfilled all the expectations that were laid out for you. Okay. Delinquent usually has a very negative connotation. So don't commit a crime as a juvenile. You won't have to worry about it. And if certain crimes are committed, the age considered to be a juvenile is lowered. So if you commit armed robbery or attempted murder or murder at the age of 15, they're going to try you in a court as if you were 18 years old and an adult. All right. So if you commit serious felonies, remember felonies are more serious crimes. All right. Armed robbery, arson, burning people's stuff up, things like that. Okay. You are considered to be tried as an adult. So the age, if you act like you're an adult when you commit a crime, you're going to get treated like an adult in the process to punish you for said crime. All right. Another fun thing about, not really fun, but another interesting thing, I guess you could say, about juveniles is they are not privy to the death penalty unless you are have attained to the age of 16 years. All right, so there was a murder case a few years back, it's actually several years back, probably in, I think, 2009 or 10, where the student body president of UNC Chapel Hill of Carolina, a girl named Eve Carson, was kidnapped, held at gunpoint by two men, one of which was 15 years old and 10 months. So he was 2 months from being 16, and the other one was 18 years old. The 15-year-old kid ended up shooting her I think 3 times, in the chest and the head, to execute her. And since he was 15 years old and 10 months at the time of the crime, he was not eligible for the death penalty. However, the 18-year-old was eligible for the death penalty because he was an accessory to murder. He stood by and did nothing while this kid murdered an innocent human being. So he is on death row currently, and he has an automatic appeal. All right, so if you remember talking about the appeals process, he has an automatic one, because if you end up on death row, you have an automatic appeal. But the kid who actually pulled the trigger and took a life did not receive the death penalty. He received life in prison without the possibility of parole, and it was tried as an adult in court. Right, because he was not 16 at the time of the crime. All right, so consequences for juveniles. Talk about this just a little bit. The whole purpose is rehabilitation. The goal is not to punish you. The goal is to take you off of the prison pipeline and get you on the right track, on a good path for your life. You either have regular or teen court. Some people are like, teen court is stupid. All right, basically, people who are your age look at you, ask you what in the world you were thinking, doing some nonsense in your spare time, all right, and they will assign you a punishment based on what they feel is adequate for the crime. A judge does preside over this and will sign off on the consequences so that it is legit in the eyes of the law. Probation is also a consequence. You might get a lovely ankle bracelet for your time and your efforts in the prison system. And remember, probation and parole are 2 different things. So probation is your sentence. So you are watched, you are tracked to make sure you're not doing anything crazy and associate with people you do not need to be associating with. And counseling is another consequence. Counseling is a positive consequence. Usually we think of negative things when we're like consequences, like, ooh, that's bad, all right? Counseling can be a good thing. You talking out and hashing out your problems with someone who can help you psychologically is typically a very good thing. Now, if you don't take counseling seriously, it's obviously not going to help you. All right, and then motives. Why in the world do you commit crazy crimes under the age of 16? Why do people do these things? All right, if you look over here to the pie chart on the right, stop, go away. Over here, misdemeanors, class 1, 2, and 3 misdemeanors make up 63% of all the crimes made by juveniles in 2006. Now, this is a long time ago, but the percentage has stayed roughly the same. All right, felonies only make up about 3%. So these are the really crazy people. Infractions, so you did something stupid while you were already in prison. Status or undisciplined, so you got off with a warning. And then A1 misdemeanors are 22. Felony, F through I, and A1 misdemeanors, so things that are more serious but not quite class A through E violent are a little bit larger. So usually people don't do too awful of things as juveniles, but sometimes they do get caught up in bad situations, all right? So some things that could motivate a juvenile: rough home environment. If you live in a trap house, that's going to seem normal to you. It is not normal, but if that's the environment that you grow up in, you are going to be faced with a very different set of circumstances than someone who does not live in that kind of home environment. Immaturity, peer pressure. You're trying to impress your friends and you have no idea what right and wrong is yet. You do, but you just don't act on it, okay? You live in a rough neighborhood, so it might not be your home environment that's an issue, but it might be your neighborhood that you're trying to fit in with, all right? Drugs or alcohol could be an issue, could impair your judgment and therefore lead you to terrible things. All right, dropping out of school. This is not a good idea. All right, legally you can drop out of school at 16, but if you do, you, over the course of your lifetime, are going to lose about $350,000 worth of money that you could receive as a person. $350K, people. That's enough to buy multiple Land Rovers if you wanted to. Just saying, or a house without having to pay a mortgage. All right. Or being a gang member. A lot of things that people do are because they want to be initiated into a gang in some way, shape, or form. All right. If you've ever heard someone talk about do not flash your lights at someone if they don't have their lights on, that was from the Bloods and the Crips having initiations in Scotland and Richmond County, where I am from. Well, the 2 counties that neighbor each other where I'm from. People who wanted to be in the Bloods and the Crips, they would literally ride around in a car. And if they wanted to be initiated into the gang, the first person who flicked their lights at them, they'd flip the car around and they would go find them, ram them off the road, and kill everyone in the vehicle in order to receive a flag. All right, so being a gang member is also a motive of juvenile crime, which is also a terrible thing. All right, so that's all I've got for juvenile law. Hope you enjoyed it.